The bottom line about Islam is no one's able to get away from him. Very good standing up now, and he gets a hold of you, you're a f***spill. He has a different kind of wrestling. His submissions are fucking insane too. He's just got a vice grip, man.
I know.
Because when I would stand next to him in the octagon when he was the 55-pound champion, I'd be like, how?
Yeah.
How do you weigh 55? That doesn't even make any sense. You're 190 pounds right now.
Yeah.
Guaranteed. If I put you on a scale, you weigh 190. If Ian Garry can get off sharp combinations early, he could stun him.
Yeah.
Because Ian can move. He's fast as and he's super accurate. And the way he throws his strikes is like real clean.
Yeah.
No fat in his move. Pop, pop. Yeah. Everything's like, pop, pop. Yeah, he's not like a physically overpowering guy. It's technique. His technique is sharp.
I saw a tweet recently that said, when you want to punish someone, they should have to listen to Ian Garry for X amount of years. I don't agree with that. I don't think Ian Garry is that annoying human being on the planet. I think Ian Garry is a very confident young man. Garry the fighter, he is elite. So Islam almost trying to challenge his ego to make him fight the fight that would suit him. It's obviously smart on Islam's behalf, because at the end of the day, I believe that Islam's team would be smart enough to understand this is gonna be a very difficult fight, or has the potential to be a very difficult fight. Garry is a very big guy for the weight class, very tall, very agile, and can move around for 25 minutes if need be, which could cause issues for Islam. He'll be a shorter fighter. It's a hard fight though. It's a hard fight for Ian Garry. It's a hard fight for Islam Makhachev. I believe that this fight will be determined by what happens in the beginning of the fight. If Garry is able to stay upright for a first round, it could be a long night for Islam. But if Islam is able to secure takedowns early or get close to Ian Garry, I believe that then the fight will start to sway in his side.
Islam finishes people. Islam bounce people head off the wall. Islam submit people. You know, he's gonna do what Islam want him to do in the fight. Islam is gonna hunt him like a deer, who's a hunter, who's a 50 caliber machine gun, and after that he's gonna put a bullet in his head, and he's gonna put him out. You know what I'm saying? Because he's gonna run like a deer, and he's fast. He can run. But when the last time we see him knock somebody out? You know, the last time he won a fight, he was running for his life against Parata when Parata started whooping on him, right? I think he's there because Islam smashed everybody. I think it was other people more deserving than him. But guess what? He talked himself into this title shot, like Kobe did, like McGregor did, like and what happened? They all got put away, and Islam is gonna put them.
I think Ian Garry's gonna get the job done. Islam Makhachev, pound for pound, best in the world versus Ian Garry. I'm excited for that fight.
Who'd you guys pick to win?
I'm leaning towards Garry. He's big. I think Ian's best shot of winning this fight is coming in there with that confidence, not getting taken down.
What do you think?
It's so hard to pick against Islam.
But yeah, I just think that Islam, as good as he's looked, I don't know if we'll see a finish in this one. I mentioned it off the top. Ian Garry is the biggest fighter that Islam's fought in his career. So I do wonder how he's going to deal with that height and reach advantage for Garry. So it might take him a little bit too. That's another reason why I'm not leaning a quick finish in this one, because Gary's going to be pretty tough to figure out as far as the height and reach and all that. I will argue too that Garry really hasn't fought a lot of wrestlers / grapplers. Obviously, Bilal's known for his wrestling and grappling. Shavkat's known a bit for that too. But like, you know, Bilal is like a much older version of Islam and obviously not as skilled in my opinion. So, you know, Garry didn't seem to have any problems with that. And Shavkat, you know, again, I thought Garry looked good in that fight. Shavkat, you know, he caught him at a time when I know Shavkat was injured in that fight, but seemed to hold his own okay and ended up losing a decision in that one. Shavkat couldn't finish Garry either. So that's another reason why I think Garry could potentially.
Makhachev the GOAT if he beats Ian Garry. Why? Why would that possibly be a discussion? Well, I'll tell you why, because he is currently tied. Islam is currently tied for the longest win streak in UFC history. If he beats Ian Garry, he will have the longest win streak in UFC history. And I gotta tell you, I must tell you in fairness, and Islam was very rude to me. But I still got to tell you, weight classes matter to me. when they started talking about the greatest pound-for-pound fighters of all time, it used to frustrate me, and I go, well, it's between Dan Henderson and Kenny Florian. That's it. And people would push back and say, why would you say that? And I'll say, because Dan Henderson and Kenny Florian are the only two guys in history to change weight classes and succeed. They're the only two guys to actually cover the spread. So instead of sitting around and guessing about who could do what at different weights when they didn't have the courage to even try, let's give it to the two guys that did, and that was my contention. Now, I tell you that because I feel that I must apply that to Islam. Beating Ian Garry or having the longest run in MMA history.
The conversation around UFC 330 has reached another level because some of the most experienced minds in mixed martial arts are beginning to weigh in on one of the year's most fascinating matchups. When respected analysts like Joe Rogan and fighters who have actually shared the octagon with Islam Makhachev start breaking down a fight, people listen for one reason: they understand details that casual fans often miss. And this time, the discussion isn't simply about who wins, it's about whether Ian Machado Garry has the style to solve one of the most complete champions in the sport. That is exactly why this fight has become such a major talking point across the MMA community. On one side stands Islam Makhachev, a fighter who has built his reputation on consistency, discipline, and an almost unmatched ability to dictate where every fight takes place. On the other side is Ian Machado Garry, a confident, technically gifted striker who believes his movement, intelligence, and adaptability can create problems that many previous opponents could not. Several respected voices have noted that this matchup is much more complicated than it appears at first glance. Those who follow the sport carefully are not dismissing Garry simply because of Makhachev's championship pedigree. At the same time, very few analysts are willing to underestimate what Islam has accomplished against elite competition. That balance is exactly what makes this prediction so intriguing. Joe Rogan has spent decades studying martial arts and watching countless championship fights unfold from cagey side. While he has consistently praised Makhachev's complete skill set throughout the years, Rogan has also emphasized how difficult it is to prepare for fighters who refuse to fight at a predictable rhythm. Ian Garry falls into that category. Garry's greatest strength may not be his power or even his speed. It is the way he controls distance. He constantly changes angles, shifts his stance, and forces opponents to reset before they can launch meaningful offense. Against many fighters, that style becomes frustrating very quickly because they end up chasing him instead of executing their own game plan. But facing Islam Makhachev presents a completely different challenge. Unlike traditional pressure fighters who simply walk forward throwing combinations, Makhachev pressures with purpose. Every step serves to back his opponent toward the fence. Every feint is designed to create hesitation. Every exchange becomes an opportunity to close distance and threaten the takedown. That is why analysts within the combat sports community have pointed out that footwork alone may not be enough.
He seems to really respect you and your greatness and everything that you've done, but he also says, he wants to beat you in your own world on the ground, and he's gonna bounce your head off the canvas and stop history from happening. What do you make of this?
Bro, I saw his couple interview. Honestly, he looks very bad in this interview. Better for him training more and do less interview, It look like somebody in the house control him and tell him what to say in the interview. He tried to, in the fight week, he always tried to be like bad guy, but he act like he bad guy. Everybody talking, everybody say, I'm gonna knock him out, Islam, I'm gonna do some beat Islam, but when fight's beginning, they all forgot what they say.
For Garry, movement has to become offense. If he spends too much time circling without making Makhachev pay, Islam's pressure only becomes more effective as the rounds progress. The champion has repeatedly shown that once he establishes control over positioning, the entire fight begins moving in his direction. Former opponents who have experienced Makhachev firsthand understand something that statistics cannot fully explain. Many have spoken generally about how exhausting it is to constantly defend against his wrestling threats, even during moments when he isn't actively shooting for takedowns. The psychological pressure forces opponents to think about multiple attacks at once. They hesitate before throwing combinations because they know a mistimed strike could immediately become a grappling exchange. That constant decision-making wears fighters down. It isn't simply about getting taken down. It's about never feeling comfortable enough to fully commit. That is one of the reasons why Islam's striking has improved so dramatically over the years. His opponents often become so focused on defending the wrestling that clean striking opportunities naturally begin to appear. disappear. However, Ian Garry presents a different kind of puzzle. His striking is built around patience rather than reckless aggression. He rarely loads up on wild punches. Instead, he picks his moments carefully, attacks from unexpected angles, and avoids giving opponents obvious opportunities to counter. Several respected voices have noted that this patience could become one of Garry's biggest advantages. If he can force Islam into longer striking exchanges without overcommitting, the fight becomes increasingly interesting, but accomplishing that is far easier said than done. Makhachev has become one of the sport's best at blending striking with grappling. Every jab can become a level change. Every clinch can become a takedown. Every scramble can become dominant control on the ground. That seamless transition between phases is what separates great fighters from champions, and Islam has repeatedly demonstrated that ability against elite competition. Another important factor that professionals continue discussing is championship experience. Big fights create unique pressure, bright lights, enormous expectations, and championship stakes affect athletes differently. Islam Makhachev has repeatedly proven that he can perform under those conditions. Whether facing dangerous finishers or elite technicians, he has consistently remained composed. He rarely rushes. He rarely allows emotions to dictate his decisions. Instead, he trusts his preparation. That calm approach has become one of the defining characteristics of his career. Ian Garry enters this matchup carrying a different kind of momentum. He has built confidence through impressive performances and believes he belongs among the very best fighters in the world. Confidence matters in combat sports. Without it, fighters hesitate. With too much of it, they make mistakes. The challenge is finding the perfect balance. Against someone like Makhachev, discipline becomes every bit as important as confidence. One reckless exchange could completely change the fight. That brings us to perhaps the biggest tactical question of UFC 330.
Well, I think Islam would have to be a strong favorite, but I think Ian's going to give him some problems because Ian's a tall guy. He's got great jiu-jitsu. He's got great striking. Yeah, I think Ian Garry's going to give Islam a lot of problems.
Okay, but is that enough problems to defeat him, or do you think Islam still takes him?
Yeah, I think Ian Garry can win. I think he can walk away with it, to be honest.
Islam. I don't see anybody who can stop him right now in this division.
I think it's a really good fight, and I think Ian is going to surprise a lot of people with how talented he is and how skillful he is. Actually, I trained with him for the Carlos Prates fight, so I'm excited to go see him perform as well. And yeah, I think he gets it done. So we'll see.
I think Makhachev is bigger, and he's stronger. And I think Makhachev is bigger, and he's stronger, and like he got more power. And he gonna take him down and hold him and submit him. Yeah.
I think it's hard to count on Islam right now. He's just so dominant. I don't see Ian having a lot of options to winning that one.
Man, it's very interesting to see how this fight plays out because one of the only loss that Ian Garry has been against a real tough grappler when he fought Shavkat. So seeing him going against another tough grappler, I can see that being where he struggles. But one of the things that I think Shavkat brought to the table that Islam doesn't necessarily bring is just the sheer size difference. Like Shavkat is also a lankier opponent as well. Like he doesn't allow for a guy to be able to stay on the outside and kind of pick him apart. He's also a really tall, lanky welterweight in himself. So to play the long game and fight on the outside is something that is going to be extremely difficult to do against a guy like Shavkat, where I honestly think Ian Garry may have an advantage in the striking and the range department going into this fight against Islam. Islam does very good in the pocket, does very good when he's able to close distance, but Ian Garry is very good at being able to fight on the outside and avoid his opponents being able to close distance on him. I mean, I've experienced it firsthand, so I think that's something that's going to play a pretty big factor going into this fight for Ian Garry.
Can Garry consistently stop the takedown without sacrificing his striking? Many fans focus entirely on defensive wrestling, but the reality is more complicated. Even successful takedown defense requires energy. Every sprawl brawl, every clinch battle, every scramble, each exchange slowly drains the gas tank. Islam understands this better than almost anyone. He doesn't necessarily need every takedown to succeed. Sometimes forcing repeated defensive reactions is enough to create openings later. That cumulative pressure often becomes visible during championship rounds. The fighter defending begins slowing down. Movement becomes less explosive. Reactions become slightly delayed. Those tiny differences can decide championship fights. Of course, Garry has weapons of his own. His timing, shot selection, and ability to remain composed at striking range give him opportunities that previous opponents may not have possessed. If he can establish his jab early, maintain the center of the cage, and avoid prolonged clinch exchanges, he can force Islam into situations that are less comfortable. Distance management will likely become one of the defining stories of this fight. Who controls it? Who dictates where exchanges happen? Who forces the other fighter to abandon plan A? Those answers may ultimately determine the outcome. Analysts within the combat sports community have also highlighted the importance of adaptability. Championship fights rarely unfold exactly as expected. Game plans change. Unexpected moments happen. A cut opens. A fighter gets rocked. A scramble creates new opportunities. The athletes who adjust fastest usually leave with their hands raised. Makhachev has repeatedly shown the ability to adapt without abandoning his identity. That may be one of his greatest strengths. He doesn't panic when something fails. He simply moves to the next sequence. That level of composure is difficult to teach. It comes from years of elite competition. Ian Garry will need that same level of adaptability if he hopes to pull off what many would consider one of the biggest victories of his career. If plan A doesn't work, he cannot become desperate. If Islam secures an early takedown, Garry must remain mentally engaged. Championship fights are often won by the fighter who refuses to let one difficult moment define the remaining rounds. As prediction time approaches, opinions across the MMA world remain divided for understandable reasons. Supporters of Makhachev point toward his wrestling, championship experience, positional dominance, and ability to systematically break opponents down. Supporters of Garry believe his striking IQ, movement, confidence, and unpredictability create a stylistic challenge unlike many Islam has recently faced. Both arguments carry legitimate weight. That is why this matchup has generated so much attention. It isn't built around hype alone. It's built around genuine stylistic intrigue. When looking at every factor together, experience still feels like the deciding element. Makhachev has repeatedly answered difficult questions against elite competition. He has shown he can win striking battles, dominate grappling exchanges, remain patient under pressure, and execute game plans across 5 rounds. That complete package is incredibly difficult to overcome. Ian Garry absolutely possesses the talent to create competitive moments, especially during open striking exchanges. His footwork and timing could win rounds if he consistently controls range and prevents prolonged grappling sequences. But sustaining that success over the course of an entire championship fight against someone as relentless as Islam Makhachev remains the biggest challenge. The lean has to be toward Makhachev because of his ability to impose his preferred style over extended periods. Whether through relentless pressure, calculated grappling, or disciplined striking, he simply offers more consistent paths to victory. Still, dismissing Garry would be a mistake. Those who follow the sport carefully understand that styles create surprises, and every great champion eventually faces an opponent capable of asking questions no one expected. That uncertainty is exactly why UFC 330 has become one of the most anticipated fights on the calendar. So here's the question for you. Do you believe Ian Machado Garry has the movement, discipline, and fight IQ to keep Islam Makhachev from establishing his wrestling game, or will the champion once again prove that his pressure, control, and championship experience are simply too much for another elite challenger? Share your prediction in the comments below, and if you enjoy serious combat sports analysis, breaking MMA news, fight reactions, and detailed predictions, make sure to subscribe so you never miss the next big story from the world of mixed martial arts.